Insane protests have been happening in China, where thousands of citizens are taking part in protests to demand President Xi Jinping step down. Although there have been demonstrations against the government policies in China for years, the current protests have reached unseen levels of intensity and organization. Since early 2020, the world has been grappling with a pandemic that has upended lives and economies. In the midst of this global crisis, China was one of the first countries to implement a series of strict lockdown measures in an attempt to control the speed of the virus. While these measures were initially successful in stemming the tide of infections, they came at great cost. Businesses were forced to close, people were confined to their homes, and the economy took a hit. As the months wore on, frustration began to build among the Chinese people. And then, in early 2021, a new outbreak emerged in the city of Wuhan. Once again, strict lockdown measures were imposed. But this time, there was a new element, a so-called zero-COVID policy that called for even more stringent measures, including mass testing and quarantining of entire neighborhoods. The policy was successful in containing the outbreak, but it came at an even greater cost. People were cut off from their families, businesses were shuttered, and the economy took another major blow. The frustration that had been building for months boiled over into anger and resentment. And now people are taking to the streets in massive numbers to demand an end to the zero-COVID policy and the resignation of those who implemented it. The China Zero-COVID policy is a set of guidelines that the Chinese government has put in place in order to try and stop the spread of the coronavirus. The main aim of the policy is to get all of China's citizens tested for the virus, and then to isolate and treat those who are infected. The policy has been controversial as it has led to mass testing and quarantining of people, even if they show no symptoms of the virus. This has caused many people to feel as though they're being treated like criminals and has led to a lot of protest. The policy has also been criticized for its lack of transparency. The Chinese government has not released much information about how the policy is being implemented or what its long-term goals are. This has made it difficult for people to understand what exactly is happening and has led to a lot of speculation and rumors. The protests against the Chinese government's zero-COVID policy are becoming increasingly violent. In some cases, protesters have attacked government buildings and set fire to cars. Want freedom has spread across the nation as a catchphrase for a surge of protest driven primarily by the youth of today, some of whom are too young to have participated in early acts of open rebellion against the government. Voices that have been circulating online show large crowds yelling, "Give me liberty or give me death," as vigils to honor the deaths of at least 10 persons in a fire in Xinjiang turned into political rallies. Videos that have been making the rounds online appear to indicate that China's rigorous zero-COVID policy originally stopped emergency personnel from getting to the scene, infuriating citizens who had undergone 3 years of fluctuating COVID controls. Dissent is not common in China. The Communist Party controls the media and suppresses any form of dissent. However, there have been a number of high-profile protests in recent years. In 2012, for example, protesters took to the streets to demand an end to corruption. And in 2014, demonstrators occupied Hong Kong's financial district to demand more democracy. Right now, there are mass protests happening across China. Protesters are calling for the resignation of China's President Xi Jinping and an end to Communist Party rule. They're also demanding more democracy and freedom. So far, the Chinese government has responded to the protest with a heavy-handed crackdown. Thousands of people have been arrested, and many more have been put under surveillance. In cities all around China, from the capital Beijing to the southern metropolis of Guangzhou and the western city of Chengdu, some demonstrators screamed for freedom of speech, democratization, the rule of law, civil rights, and other political demands. The eastern financial powerhouse of Shanghai was one of those places. It's unusual for protests to spread across so many locations and focus on a single topic, especially so soon following President Xi Jinping's confirmation for a third term in power. Some of the demonstrators in Shanghai have yelled slogans demanding that he go. People were heard openly yelling chants like, "Xi Jinping step down," and "Communist Party step down" during the demonstration on Saturday night in the city. Although the demonstrators in Chengdu did not specifically mention Xi, their message was clear. According to recordings and a participant Hundreds of people packed the busy riverbanks in a popular dining and retail area on Sunday evening and screamed, "Opposition to dictatorship." Security has been reinforced across cities in a nation where authorities have extensive surveillance and security capabilities. Despite the fact that protests in some regions of China appear to have mostly dissipated peacefully over the weekend, the government has deployed riot police and has been using tear gas and water cannons to disperse crowds. They've also arrested several protest leaders. The crackdown on dissent in China has intensified in recent years as the government has sought to quash any challenges to its rule. The risk of speaking out against the government is higher than ever before. On Monday, one day after protests there erupted, it was clear that there were many police personnel present in Beijing. In the capital's central Chaoyang district near Liangmengqiao, where a sizable gathering of demonstrators had assembled Sunday night, police cars lined the streets, many of them parked with their lights blinking. After 10 years in office, Xi faces what may be his largest policy conundrum: how to calm the clamor. A quick exit from COVID-0 could lead to an increase in fatalities, undermining Xi's efforts to highlight China's superior pandemic response to that of the West. On the other side, suppressing the protests can increase popular support for a cause that already enjoys broad public backing. The long-term effects of these protests are difficult to predict. However, it is clear that they've already had a significant impact on the Chinese government. In the short term, the protests are likely to result in an increased crackdown on dissent by the Chinese government. This could lead to more arrest and imprisonment of protesters, as well as further tightening of controls on the internet and the media. In the long term, however, these protests could mark a turning point in China's history, as they suggest a growing willingness among the Chinese people to stand up against their government. If this trend continues, it could eventually lead to significant political change in China. This is definitely an interesting time in Chinese history. The protests and the calls for change have already had an impact on the government, demonstrating that citizens are no longer willing to be silenced. It'll be fascinating to watch how this plays out in the coming months and years, as more individuals come out and make their voices heard. Ultimately, only time will tell if these protests will lead to tangible change. But for now, it's clear that the Chinese people are determined to make their voices heard and demand a brighter future. China is at an important juncture, and the road ahead could be long and winding. What lies down this path remains to be seen. Hope this video was helpful and in your best interest. What do you think can help Xi overcome ongoing protest, or will the Chinese succeed in removing Xi from power? Let us know your thoughts in the comments section. Don't forget to like and subscribe for more of these videos. See you in the next video.